Hey, this is Giacomo Smith from Kansas Smitty's, and you're listening to Live at 5. Before we start today, I just want to remind you that we rely on your support to continue through this period. So remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the link in the description below to see where you can donate, sign up for a Smitty's membership, or buy our records and merchandise. Thanks a lot for tuning in. You're on. Hey there, you're listening to Live at 5, and we're going to jump right in with some music. This is Ferg Ireland earlier today, playing in the comfort of his own home. He's playing I Mean You by Thelonious Monk. Oh, hey. Okay. Perfect. That's Ferg Ireland playing Thelonious Monk's I Mean You. Ferg, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, you know, is the screen on me now? I can't tell from the thing.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Okay, good.
You're live. You're live.
The world
And
can see
Darcy's here as well.
Hi, everyone.
And yeah, Ferg, what's new besides what's new within the walls of your house? What are you practicing, and what are you working on, if anything?
Um, what have I been working on? Mostly the past week, I've just been trying to sort of. I haven't really been playing loads of double bass. I've mostly been like writing, sort of on the computer and making. I'm trying to like write my next record. Basically, I'm using the time to, but I'm not sure what that is exactly. The stuff that I've been doing is sort of I don't know. It's more electronic-y and things, and
Yeah.
sort of
Cool.
making beats and practicing bass guitar over them, and yeah, just trying to like do something every day, whether or not that ends up being like a little beat or whether it ends up being um, a demo that then I'll record with more instruments, and what I mean, just trying to write basically is that's been my main aim, as well as doing yoga
Yeah,
and
nice.
cooking, and just trying to use it. So, in a way, it hasn't been that bad for me, but all this time, in a way, it's quite nice to have some time to myself, not to spend with Ruth, and to like just not be doing a gig every day. As much as I
Yeah.
love playing, it's kind of nice to have extended period of time where your choices of what you can do are limited. So yeah, I don't know, just doing stuff that's more like, you know what I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's almost like in a sense, it's almost like a forced retreat. It's like
Yeah, yeah, like a
it's like you've been,
sabbatical sort of thing.
yeah, uh, albeit in the midst of a global pandemic, but that's
Yeah.
besides the point. But I think it's really important that you've managed to harness the time, because I think for me,
Mm.
there was a lot of floundering about in kind of like, what am I going to do with this time? But it's but yeah, I mean,
Well,
if you
I'm not
can,
using every waking moment really, really productively. Like, don't get me wrong, but um, yeah, I think that's fine too. To have some time to like just chill out and listen to music, read, watch Netflix, whatever. It's all
Netflix and
good.
chill.
Netflix and chill. Yeah, exactly.
So, in terms of your releases before, um, I know you have your first EP out, but you said the second one. Like, where can people hear that, and where can? Because I mean, I know I have the vinyl. I think it's still at the bar, unfortunately. Um, but where can people hear your, like? Because you have one album recorded and done already with your trio, and I assume this next one is going to be different. But where is the first one living?
So what it is I recorded one album, and I split the album into two separate EP releases. So the first one that's out already is an EP, which is a 2-track thing. That you can find that, I think I haven't got it on Spotify yet. That was a choice that I made. I didn't want it to be there. I wanted it to just be available in a physical format um, initially. So you can get, I think you can, there's a Bandcamp, although I think they're all sold out on there. I think there might be a couple of copies knocking around in a few record shops. Maybe online you can find them. I think maybe If Music has it, but apart from it's mostly sold out. So you
Okay,
can't really
that's
you can't get it anywhere.
you're in a very, very rare position as a musician. That's great. So when's the second one going to drop?
Well, that's sort of been an ongoing thing, because trying to just find the right time to do it has been difficult for various reasons, and then obviously this whole scenario that we're in now has yes added to the complications. So, and I was hoping to do a release and like a launch gig and all that sort of stuff at probably the end of May, but I don't think that's going to happen now, obviously. So I'm not sure.
Okay, all right. Well,
Maybe, I don't know. I haven't decided, but yeah, in
yeah,
in a few months,
great.
and
Well,
that will
keep
be
us
available on Spotify and so on and so forth.
cool, cool.
Yeah,
Well, keep us posted on that. I mean, I'd love to hear it for
but
sure.
I've got a few copies of the first one and some um, of the second vinyl, and also some test pressings and stuff. So if anyone wants to get those from me directly, that is a possibility. But with the second one, I'm also doing CDs and things, and more options to consume it rather than just the vinyl.
Great, great, great,
It's
great.
a
So
learning curve, in terms of like putting out a record.
well, it's yeah. I mean, it's so different from, I mean, a lot of things have changed in music and in jazz particularly. But you think about what you need to learn to be a jazz musician, a professional jazz musician in this day and age. And you look at somebody, I was just listening to this Detroit Jazzmen album this morning that I think is just great. And Paul Chambers is on it. He sounds incredible. And, that's 1950, I want to say like 56, 55. And you think about what Paul Chambers had to worry about as a jazz bass player in 1956. And he didn't have to
Wow.
worry about when his album was going to come out. He didn't have to worry about how he was going to upload it to Bandcamp. He didn't have to worry about digital distribution. And it's kind of an amazing thing, the things that you're expected to learn. And
Yeah.
I think that the back end of stuff, is so it's so under publicized in terms of, when people come to see you play, they won't know that you've spent 5 hours or 6 hours of the day sending invoices, making phone calls, paying for your parking.
Yeah, but why should they know about that? That's the boring side of it. I mean,
Totally,
I get your point, but that's life.
It is.
And also, Paul Chambers had lots of other things to deal with that I definitely haven't had to deal with. So I don't know whether, having to send a few invoices is a worse fate. You know what I mean?
Very, 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 very true. Very wise. Well, we're gonna listen to some more music from Ferg. I think I want to hear your original tune now. That's When You Know, isn't it?
Yes, and that's on the second release. This tune. So
okay, Dars, hit it with When You Know. Cool. So that was Ferg Ireland playing his own composition, When You Know. and you're listening to Live at 5 and watching, hopefully, from Kansas Smitty's. Make sure that you click on the link in the bio to find out how you can keep us going through this interesting time on the planet. Darcy, do we have any questions for Ferg in the chat?
Yeah, we have a question from Diana, longtime supporter of the band, the bar, and the live streams. So, hi, Diana.
Hey, Diana.
She's just asking if you could give any advice on developing your ear if you can't study jazz full time, apart from listening to lots of jazz, I guess.
Listening to lots of music in general, not just jazz. I mean, I've got some friends of mine who do a lot of like ear training, like programs or apps. So you can. I used to do that maybe more, but these days not so much. But yeah, like you can get these programs where it gives you exercises where you have to differentiate between intervals, or you have to pick out chords, and so you can start it at different levels. So if you're a beginner with it, they're pretty good programs actually to train your ear. So, but if you use those programs and you do it like that, and then it's a different thing actually when you're doing it in real time. So like being able to pick out notes, or be able to tell what's going on. I think practice really is just like anything else. Practicing using those apps is really good, or those programs, and then just practicing. Sitting at a piano or an instrument and playing intervals with your eyes closed and trying to hear what they are, or tell what sort of chord is this, what sort of chord is that. There's lots of ways you can do it, but essentially practice makes perfect. That's the answer really.
I think I'd say to that as well. I mean, all that Ferg said is totally on the money. But I know that for me, I whistle a lot, but singing is the same. But if you can sing along, and I know Diana, I know you want to sing. You're a singer. So if you can always be singing along to the records that you're listening to, then you'll be able to, because it's in a lot of ways it's kind of a muscle memory exercise in terms of like the distance between intervals, because what you're learning with your voice is what Ferg would learn on the string, and he's like finding out where those intervals are, and in the same way that you practice finding notes there, you find them in your voice as well. And you think about somebody particularly, I think about like Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong used to just practice along to the radio. He used to just put the radio on and he'd be listening to talk radio, and they'd have like the theme tune and he'd play along with that. And he's, there are recordings of him doing this. He used to record himself at home a lot, and he used to play along to opera broadcasts, and he used to play along to all kinds of stuff. And that's kind of a great way to practice just kind of second nature ear training, where you're just kind of listening to something on the spot and playing along with it. I think that's a great exercise.
Another good one is if you like by association. So you learn. I'm just talking about intervals here, really. But if you're learning songs that have a really obvious use of a particular interval, and so that's how you associate that sound with that song or whatever. So like the beginning of the Simpsons theme tune is a tritone. If you think about that in your head, like learning what they sound like, through familiar material. So songs that you already know, or famous songs, and you're like, oh, that bit is this is a fifth, or this bit is a sixth, or that's quite a good to learn something via something that you're already familiar with is a good route, I find.
I mean, if you think about something like, if you think about something like Exactly Like You, that's one that kind of goes down. you know? That's just descending in, descending stepwise down, but fourths. And that's a song. So, a lot of these things with ear training is recognizing, you learn it in your voice or you learn it on your instrument. And then later you find out what it's called. I remember when I was in college, I was learning, going to music theory classes and being taught what the dominant was, in harmony. And I didn't know that it was called that, but I had heard it 1,000 times, So I think it's mostly like Ferg said, find a song that has these little skips in it and sing along with it until those little skips are second nature to you. And then you'll start to hear them in other songs. And then the third step after that is that you'll find out that that's called a fourth, or it's called a fifth, or it's called a third. And by the time that you've named it, then you're able to communicate it to somebody else. That's kind of the naming of musical terms, is so that we can communicate them to others. So, Darce, do we have any other questions for Ferg?
None right now, but how about we go to another one of these tunes that Ferg's recorded of us?
Yeah, let's hit it. Let's hear that bebop tune. This is Crazyology. Yeah. So that was Crazyology by Charlie Parker, played by Ferg Ireland. You're listening to Live at 5. Ferg, I wanted to ask you, because we've played together for years, and I still find this kind of an amazing thing that you're able to do, how you approach the role of the bass stylistically in different types of music. Because, you play everything from, you play kind of modern groove bass jazz, you play modern like mixed meter and very highly composed jazz, and you play everything all the way 100 years ago to trad and early swing. And I just was wondering how you were able to kind of to do that. How did you learn to do that? Did somebody teach you that, or did you just kind of figure it out?
No, nobody. Nobody taught me explicitly how to do those styles. No, that's just from doing it. Some, the way that you learn, I guess, is like the sort of school maybe that you learn coming up is a sort of the traditional, starting from bebop, I guess, sort of, you know, walking bass and playing standards in that way, and then you sort of start adding more modern sort of jazz school stuff to it, and more sort of the at the time that I was coming up, some of the teachers I had or colleagues I had were very much into the odd time and sort of difficult rhythm stuff. So I kind of got into that quite early. So I sort of went to that, the more complex end, I guess, earlier on. And then I spent quite a long time going back all the way through, figuring out like, oh, how am I going to learn how to play? So I've got to play like a bunch of trad gigs, and suddenly I've got like 100, 200 new songs to learn. And like, how do I learn that? It's a different style. How can I play appropriately? So you listen and you copy and you assimilate and you learn and you do the gigs, and then it's the same. And it's the same. I started playing gigs at Ronnie's, playing loads of bebop. So then you have to learn, okay, how am I going to do that? Was maybe a bit easier because that was more familiar to me. But in terms of the other styles, it was, you just learn, you do more of it, you learn more of it, you listen to more of it. The groove stuff, for me, that's different, because that's more about, it's not really that it's so difficult to play the notes or something. What's difficult is to have the right feel or the right pocket or groove. But I've spent so much of my life listening to music of that nature, and loads of groove-based music and hip hop and things like that. So that sort of feeling was already familiar to me, I suppose. But all of them, it's more about, the only way you learn how to do things is by doing it and listening to them.
Sure,
So,
sure.
you know, I got into the old school stuff through you mostly, and then I was like,
Right.
oh wow, there's this whole thing I didn't know about, and actually, it's imperative that you know about that stuff, in my opinion, because it's a lineage, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Especially
I think
jazz. You know, it's like if you can play, it's really, really, really hard to play simple music very well. The less tools you have to play with as an improviser, the more difficult it is to be interesting. So if you can play like simple, even though it's not necessarily simple, it's just, you know what I mean? It's more simple, I guess,
I just want
technically.
to, yeah, I want to ask you kind of from a more, because we're going to run out of time here soon,
Sorry.
but no, it's fine. But from a more objective standpoint, you know, when you're playing, you know, so for example, when I think of people playing in the 20s, I think
Mm,
of, you know, high action gut strings, really short percussive notes. You know, and when I think about, you know, going up through then the 40s, you have like a bit more sustain, and then you move into, obviously in the 70s you have, you know, metal strings, and you have, you know, DI bass and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
I think what you're saying is that you've learned through kind of assimilation and emulation of what you've heard on the records, but also you've learned from a practical standpoint what works on the gig. And that's what I think
definitely.
is so interesting, because like your approach to playing trad, you know, I wanted to ask you, you know, well, your approach to playing trad is unique in the sense that you don't play it the way somebody would have played it in the 30s, because you don't sound like that. But you
No.
found, you know, you found a solution that works better for our group. But you know, it's just so that people can know. I mean, what bass players have you checked out from, you know, from the 30s up until now, and that you kind of choose to emulate in terms of your articulation and your technique?
Um, I mean, that's what bass players have I checked out from the 30s until now? As I mean, there's quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah, good.
There's lots of bass, but I mean, like you said, I sort of take all those influences and then I do my own thing with it. And you play, you obviously adjust your playing to the scenario. Sound is important, especially with bass, because like you said, that is something I've struggled with sometimes. If I'm doing a lot of, say, I had loads of gigs with the sort of tradier side of things with you, but then I also had a load of gigs doing more sort of fusion stuff, or you know what I mean, modern sounding bass. Then it's kind of, you can't have the same setup necessarily, because one would be gut string vibe would be better, one thing would be steel strings lower action would be better, you know. So you have to try and find a way without like changing bass or changing strings all the time. How can I do this. You know what I mean? You have to find a way to make it
yeah.
work practically. So a lot of it's just out of practical necessity of how to approach. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Great.
But lots of people, I mean, I could reel off a list of bass players, but
Give us
Jimmy
3.
Blanton,
Yeah.
Jimmy from the old school thing, Pops Foster, Jimmy Blanton. And also, in a way, I love Mingus because his sound comes from that sort of thing to me, but it's very different. It's more modern and abstract and stuff. Paul Chambers, Ray Brown. I mean, of loads of people, modern people, Ben Williams, Matt Brewer, Matt Penman, Christian McBride's one of my favorites. Yeah, lots of people.
That's great. Well, thanks, Ferg. And we're going to wrap it up with one last tune from Ferg. But Ferg, just it's great to see you, man. And hopefully we get to play together. Hopefully get to play together soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. And thanks for tuning into Live at 5. Remember to click the link in the bio and to subscribe to this YouTube channel. We've got one more tune from Ferg. Darce, what's the last tune? I can't remember.
Prelude to a Kiss.
Ah, this is Duke Ellington's Prelude to a Kiss. This was
Beautiful song.
This was a request from me to Ferg because he taught this tune to me. So this is Prelude to a Kiss. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for listening to Live at 5. Remember to subscribe to this channel and click on the link in the description to see where you can donate, sign up for a Smitty's membership, or buy our records and merch. See you tomorrow. Thanks again.